Big Diablo week ahead. I'm hosting a Sanctuary sit-down with the Diablo 4 devs on October 16th. New Season 11 details, major changes coming to masterworking, tempering, combat, even renown. Meanwhile, Season 10 keeps getting better. This week's patch sought to address Soulspires. Did it succeed? Gifted the Tree launched. You have just a few days left to take advantage and level up some new characters. Outside of Diablo, Xbox Game Pass price drama keeps boiling, with former Microsoft veterans and even the former FTC chair throwing shade at Microsoft. Borderlands 4 is tuning melee this week, and quality of life next week. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 hit 5 million sales and teased new late game bosses and a fresh zone coming in a free patch. Path of Exile reveals 3.27 on October 23rd, and Chris Wilson sits down to chat with Grim Dawn's Arthur Bruno. Hey folks, this is Riker, and I dig into ARPG and gaming news so that you can spend more time playing games. Chapters below to skip ahead to different topics. Now, we'll start with a word from our sponsor, an ARPG that I always have fun revisiting every season, Torchlight Infinite. Torchlight Infinite's new season, Overrealm, went live yesterday. This season brings the Overrealm, a timed multi-layer rift you enter through strange doors you'll find while mapping in the Netherrealm. Once inside, you race against the clock to fill a progress bar, kind of similar to the pit in Diablo 4, but once you've filled the bar, you open a portal to the next layer, and you can go 4 layers deep by default, with each layer getting harder. Along the way, you're going to capture shadows that stack crazy drop bonuses mid-run, and sometimes when you go to the next layer, you'll trigger an Overrealm Disturbance, which is a special map mod with increased risk and reward. Your Overrealm jaunts will earn you currency you spend on your seasonal passive tree, through which you can unlock quality of life upgrades and higher difficulty tiers to increase your farming efficiency. The new hero trait this season is Creative Genius for Bing, which completely overhauls how he plays, swapping out his bombs for 2 machines that one debuffs enemies and then the other releases big bursts, making it a more methodical setup and knock 'em down playstyle. This season also introduces Ethereal Prisms, which you can socket into your talent tree to unlock build-defining effects. There's also a new combo skill system with starters and finishers inspired by fighting games. Then they're expanding build options with new core mechanics, including new universal buffs and debuffs. They're also smoothing out progression and reducing the grind. Oh, and hardcore mode is coming to Torchlight Infinite. It launches on November 6th and will include a new ranking system and exclusive rewards. So, try out Torchlight Infinite's new season for free by clicking the link in the description. Each season brings a ton of new content to explore. Diving into Diablo news, next week we get the reveal of the next big update coming to Diablo 4. According to Adam Fletcher, the next PTR will be very important. A lot will be changing, and there will be big items, including changes to masterworking and tempering, as well as combat and even renown. While he was answering follow-up questions, he also indicated that news about leaderboards should be coming soon. Now, this will not be happening via a dev stream, as dev streams are now being reserved for the final update before a season goes live. Instead, this will be another Sanctuary sit-down. We had our first one of those for Season 10, right before the PTR, to reveal the PTR. And this time around, it's going to have a different format. I'll be hosting a chat with the devs about what's coming. That video will go live on my YouTube channel on October 16th at 11 a.m. PDT, and immediately after that video, the devs will be in the Sanctuary Discord for a live Q&A where you folks can ask your questions. And during this time from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., watching 30 minutes of Diablo 4 content on Twitch will get you a Twitch drop, this dagger right here, and you can come by my stream to farm this up. But before then, sound off in the comments, folks, with what questions you most want to see answered by the devs, and I'll see if I have time to ask them during my chat. Read other people's questions and upvote the ones that you most want to see answered. If I don't have time to get to your questions, then definitely hop into the Sanctuary Discord during the Q&A and submit your questions there. Then this week we got the release of the patch we spoke about in last week's video. The changes to Soulspires went through, and Soulspires are now not terrible. Monsters do spawn inside them. They do spawn inside them pretty quickly. It takes about 4 seconds now to complete a Soulspire, which is a lot less than it used to take. It's still about 8 times longer than it takes to complete any other event, but it's a huge improvement and probably in an acceptable spot at this point, though further testing may be needed. So with that out of the way, there really are very few complaints left about Season 10. It's a solid season. Andariel is no longer annoying to fight. Chaos Rifts are such a great addition to the game, I really hope they become permanent. Goblin invasions and infernal hordes are a delight whenever they show up. The game is just full of fun moments now. This week's patch also saw the launch of the Gift of the Tree, which will only last a week, so go farm up your bonus caches while you can. They're a great way to level new characters. Farming the caches on your main character, then it only takes 14 of these caches to level up a new character from 1 to 60, assuming you're doing it during this event. And with a good speed farming build, you can get 14 caches in under 2 hours. I also released an updated meta video, making some revisions to my class tier list and top 10 builds for Season 10 following the release of this patch, so do check that out if you're wondering what class or build to try next. Then on the Diablo Immortal side of things, their Halloween event is launching on October 15th, and I only bring it up as a reminder that Blizzard is capable of doing cool events. The event is divided into 2 parts. Part 1 runs until October 29th, and it's going to see the return of the Survivor's Bane minigame, which plays a lot like Vampire Survivors, a roguelite with endless waves of monsters spawning and different skill drops to grab. Then Part 2 runs from the 29th to November 12th and brings back the Howler Hunt event, which is basically Among Us in Diablo. And participating in these events will earn you cosmetics and rewards. Now, in a follow-up to last week's story about Microsoft jacking up the price of Xbox Game Pass by 50%, well, it seems a lot of people have had a lot to say about the matter. Laura Fryer, a former long-term Microsoft employee and the co-founder of Microsoft Game Studios, criticized Microsoft for the decision to hike up the price of Game Pass. She called it tone deaf and said that the Xbox execs are out of touch with the community. She added, quote, "With this last increase to Game Pass, Xbox threw away one of their last advantages. They were the best deal in gaming. These price hikes feel like a betrayal. Greed over gaming." She blames a yes-man culture that began to fester in 2008 and that has since taken over Xbox, as per her. And that's not the only former important Microsoft figure who has been criticizing Xbox. While it was not in response to the Game Pass hike, about 2 weeks ago before the hike, former Blizzard president Mike Ibarra, who was previously the corporate vice president of Xbox Game Pass, made some tweets that were probably taking shots at Xbox. He replied to a post about the success of the PS5 with, quote, "But hey, the console market isn't a successful business. It is if you do it right." Seems to me he's saying that Sony is doing it right with the PlayStation, and presumably fighting back against internal messages he had heard at Microsoft back in the day. But another Twitter user replied to this tweet with, the bitter X, and this user's other tweets suggest that this is an Xbox fan. Ibarra replied to him with, quote, "Your console is dead." Meanwhile, former FTC chair Lena Khan has basically said, "I told you so." During her time at the FTC, she had challenged the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Now, after the price hike, she posted to social media saying, quote, "As dominant firms become too big to care, they can make things worse for their customers without having to worry about the consequences." And added, quote, "Microsoft's acquisition of Activision has been followed by significant price hikes and layoffs, harming both gamers and developers." In 2023, Microsoft claimed to regulators that Game Pass prices would not increase as a result of the merger. Since the acquisition, Game Pass prices have risen twice, doubling the cost of Game Pass. When Game Pass first launched in 2017, it was only $10 a month. Since acquiring Activision Blizzard, Xbox has also shut down studios, had mass layoffs, and raised the baseline price of AAA games to $80. Now, in fairness, the FTC tried to warn about Xbox raising prices due to it monopolizing the market, becoming the dominant force and then being able to do whatever it wants. That doesn't really seem to be what's happening. Xbox is clearly still losing the console war. They are not the leading force there. And the FTC failed to argue their case in court because they brought up, frankly, poor arguments. And even if they may have turned out to be right about the outcome being bad, their reasoning was wrong. And according to an insider report via Bloomberg, Xbox allegedly believes it lost an estimated $300 million in sales of Call of Duty last year on Xbox consoles and PC due to the game being available day one on Game Pass. Yeah, when you give a best-selling game away for the cost of a Game Pass, you lose money. Who'd have thunk it? 82% of Call of Duty sales were on PlayStation 5, since Xbox and PC players could just get the game on Game Pass for cheaper. I've spoken to game devs who were pissed when their game would go to Game Pass shortly after release, because that put a rapid stop to their sales, and their bonuses as devs were tied to the game's sales. There's always been this public insistence that Game Pass doesn't lose you sales, somehow, but all the insider info we hear says otherwise. Now, as of February 2024, there were 34 million Game Pass subscribers, meaning over the course of the 7 years since it launched, Game Pass gained 34 million subscribers. Microsoft's goal was to hit 100 million by 2030. And with growth not looking like it was taking on a higher curve, it was unlikely to be reaching 100 million in that time frame. Maybe 70 million optimistically. Now, with the price hike, I bet those numbers will actually start trending downward. So, how many of you folks are canceling your Game Pass? And if you're not, why not? Sound off in the comments. Then in some quick Borderlands 4 news, after last week's big update, we got a smaller update this week that refreshed the weekly activities and adjusted some legendary gear values. Next week, they're planning another round of adjustments, focusing on class mods, rep kits, shields, and firmware. They want to provide greater viability to melee builds. And next week's update will also have a bunch of stability and performance improvements, as well as quality of life improvements. Here's to hoping they fix the dang inventory nightmare. In other news, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has sold 5 million copies within its first 5 months. That's really impressive for a new IP from a new small studio, and given the game was available on Game Pass from day one. Imagine how many more sales if it weren't on Game Pass. Now, in celebration of this milestone, the devs have announced an update coming to the game on all platforms, which will include several additions. A new playable environment, taking the characters of Expedition 33 to a brand new location with new enemy encounters and surprises to discover, challenging new boss battles for late game players to overcome, new costumes for each of the expedition, and more. There's no date yet other than in the coming months, so, hopefully right after it wins the Game of the Year award, right? But that's not all the future has in store. Game director Guillaume Brush has said that Expedition 33 is just one of the stories that they want to tell in the Clair Obscur universe, and that they're starting to think and work on the next real game. Then in some quick Path of Exile news, we learned this week that on October 23rd, we'll get the live stream revealing the content of the next expansion, and the update itself, 3.27, will release on October 31st. Who wants to guess at what the league will be? Sound off in the comments so that if you're right, you can screenshot your time-stamped prediction and flaunt it in front of everyone. Now in some cross-interest news between Path of Exile and Grim Dawn, Chris Wilson interviewed Crate founder Arthur Bruno on his YouTube channel about ARPG development. Yeah, in case you folks don't know, Chris Wilson, GGG co-founder, has started up his own YouTube channel now that he's retired from GGG. Definitely subscribe for great insights. Anyway, during the interview, Arthur Bruno mentioned that Grim Dawn 2 is at least 6 years out, because after the upcoming Grim Dawn expansion, Fangs of Asterkarn, the team will be working on their upcoming RTS that will feature civilizations from Grim Dawn as playable races. And honestly, I think 6 years is optimistic, especially given Fangs of Asterkarn was revealed 2 years ago and still isn't out. This is a team that does not rush things. And that's going to wrap up this video, folks, but do be sure to check out last week's video in which we discussed how Last Epoch has been unprofitable since Season 1. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.